But I'll never forget my family and bringing them up there on top of the stage and holding the Lombardi trophy. And this thing's freaking huge. And actually, hold on right here. Here's every player that wins. Every player that wins one has an opportunity to pay $21,000 and get a 3/4 size of it. So
I've touched that one actually. Man. I've held that one in my hands right there, and my son has as well.
Yeah, man. So point is, man, I'm holding this trophy with my dad. I mean, this is your dad. You know, the dad that started coaching me at 4 years old and coached me all the way through up until when I went to college. He was my high school soccer coach. So my dad was a super devoted dad, but wasn't like a hyper affirming dad. My dad still has never told me like, hey, I'm proud of you. And so the point to kind of like getting into all of this is I never felt so good as seeing my dad hold that trophy, right? And then we go to the after party and my grandma and everybody's telling me how awesome I am and how great I did and all these things. Dude, I am freaking sky high because my love language as a little boy like that, my love language is words of affirmation. And like everybody's telling me how good I am and how wonderful I was. And the spotlight was on me. And, it was 120 million people just watched that game. Literally, I couldn't have been higher, and I've done a little bit of my life. I've done enough to know that there is not a drug that will make you feel better than the way that I felt in that moment when I was at that post Super Bowl party and Kenny Chesney's on the stage playing for only like 100 people. My mom, my dad, my grandma, my grandpa. And I remember telling my wife, because I've been dating my wife since pretty much I was 17 years old. I met her when I was on my official visit to the University of Illinois. So we've been together for 10 years at this point, and she's been with me through like the sloppy comedy on myself and blacked out and all the frat parties. And so I always said, man, if I ever win a Super Bowl, I'm going to get so trashed. Remember finishing my first beer, and then she's like, I'm going to go get you another beer. And that's the only time she's ever offered to go get me another beer. And I remember telling her, I don't want to feel like I look around. As soon as I left the after party, because in the NFL, they won't let even girlfriends or wives or anybody go back to your room for obvious reasons. You have to protect the integrity of the NFL. So I ended up sleeping by myself that night, left the post party at about 2:00. And I walk into my room in Indianapolis, Indiana. I remember going up to the window and looking down and seeing all of the people down there just like raging, having fun, wearing all types of different NFL jerseys. They were celebrating just that the Super Bowl happened, not that they played in it, not that they played the best game they've ever played, not that they played the best game they've ever played, set a Super Bowl record, and all of their family was there. None of that. They were just happy to be there. And I remember taking a deep breath, and it was like the first, big breath that I took since I had been by myself. And I remember before I could even exhale out, Ryan, I just remember like a freaking wave of depression coming over me. Like, you got to be kidding me, man. Like, I feel like I did everything. All these boxes are checked that I thought like would fulfill me and make me happy and make me worthy and make me this or that. And I remember feeling the exact same. And so like you have these achievements that, and it was the reason it was depressing is because every time I feel like as men, we go out and we achieve something that we use the language, I'll be happy when I can get here. And we put like a dollar amount on our bank account or a size house or a car or a size of a bicep or a body fat, like insert here, we continue to create these moments of I'll be happy. And every time we get to one of them and we don't feel good or we don't feel better about ourselves, we continue to push that rock higher. And so we continue to push the point of like happiness over the cognitive horizon. And so we just set up a hamster wheel of life where we continue to go out and achieve things. And the sick part is, Ryan, is the longer you go, the harder it is to get to these achievements. And the less that it gives you, the less it fuels you. And so the sacrifice is greater, the return is less. And that's why I believe that so many pro athletes, so many elite performers, so many guys that get to the top, and then when it's time to shift gears or recreate or evolve as a person, they struggle with that because their whole identity is this thing that they have formed for themselves. It's not
that's what I was going to say is
it's the skill outside of them.
Right. And that's what I was going to say is that must have been very difficult for you where you wrapped up your identity in performing on the field to now all right, I'm stepping away from the game. So what was that like for you when you finally left the game? You wrapped up your whole identity in there. You found your worth in being there and being a Super Bowl champion, an elite level athlete, and now you're not that anymore. Like one day earlier you are, one day later you're not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a great question, Ryan. So like this happened in my 7th year in the NFL. So I ended up, and I had been on 4 other teams previous to that point. So I want all the listeners to understand that my career was not like roses up to this point. I had been cut by 3 teams. I had been cut by the Saints. I'd been cut by the Chiefs. I'd been cut by the Jags. I'd been cut by not cut by the Jets. But the season before we won that Super Bowl, I broke an NFL record for the most punts inside the 20-yard line. And they said, no, we just don't want to renew your contract.
That was for the Jets?
That was for the Jets. Okay. So there was a lot of adversity that led up to this point in my career. And so it was almost kind of like, it wasn't like the previous 6-7 years of my NFL career were like achievement after achievement after achievement. I'm like, oh, I'm so good, but I'm so empty. No, bro, I was getting my ass kicked. I was getting cut by teams. There was one time I got cut by the New Orleans Saints, and they left me in the visitors' locker room in the beneath the stadium of the Bank of America in Charlotte, North Carolina. So point to like mentioning all of those things to you guys, man, is man, I get it. Like I get where you guys are at. I understand like you probably made some achievements in your life and they didn't make you feel the way that you thought it would make you feel. And then you shift gears and you raise the bar higher and you thought like, hey, maybe I get to 10% body fat or $1 million in the bank account, I'll feel good. And then you get there and then it didn't do that thing for you. I understand exactly where you're at. But I believe that there is a way that you can construct a blueprint for your life where there's not guilt or shame about what happened in the past. And you can kind of step into a new identity and a new, when I came into to professional football, Ryan, there's a thing that happens and they put a piece of paper in front of you and it has the deliverables on it. It has a date on it. It has the owner, it has the commissioner, and it has the assistant manager on there. And you sign your name to that. And when you sign your name to that contract, you are agreeing to be these things for this team. And because of that, they will reward you with this money. And so when things really kind of shifted for me, it was really kind of about when you came into my life, Ryan. When I left the NFL, man, I really, really struggled. And it wasn't because I felt like my identity was so wrapped up in football. I actually walked away from football before I needed to walk away from football because I understood that there was nothing within sight of that game that was going to make me feel different about me. I knew there was something. Wow. It was almost kind of like I won the Super Bowl my 7th year, and then I played 3 more years trying to figure out what it was. Is there something still inside? Is it the Pro Bowl? Is it, should I – I won the Super Bowl, and my dad didn't say, I'm so proud of you. And my dad's a Christian. What about if I become like the most philanthropic guy in the NFL? Maybe I'll grab my dad's attention. Maybe he'll be proud of me. Then maybe that'll be the thing that'll make me feel good about me, right? Hey, guess what? I checked that box too, right? And I want you guys to hear me. I'm not bragging about myself. This was a depressed little boy that was so desperately trying to get it from his dad. So like, as I talk about these achievements that I've had, understand where it's coming from. It's coming from a little boy that just wanted to be loved. It's coming from a little boy that just wanted to be worthy. It's coming from a little boy that just wanted to fit in, right? And so I became the most philanthropic man in the NFL. There's an award for that. It's called the Walter Payton Man of the Year Award. And it's something you could get nominated for. And so point is I went out and did that. Still nothing from my dad. Went out and became the fittest man in the NFL, voted by the men in the NFL, not once, but 2 times. So think about this, 100, and I was 108 pounds as a freshman in high school.
Is that right?
And he is 108 pounds. My son is 12 and he's 130. So I was 5'8", 108 pounds. And because of like this thing that I formed in my mindset as a kid, that I'm only valuable unless I achieve and do things with myself or with my body. I'm not valuable, but what I can do can be valuable, and therefore I can be valuable. And so I ravenously pursued these different goals and was voted 2 times the fittest man in the NFL. That happened. And then you get to 10 years in the NFL, which is another achievement. That's a decade of pro sports.
Yeah, man.
I'm from Terre Haute, Indiana, man. People like me are not supposed to do
that
stuff
doesn't happen.
Like this. And so that happens. And then and then at that point, I'm like, all right, man, I'm out. So I chucked them the deuces. I went and accepted a job at Spike TV. I had my own TV show. I did ESPN radio. I did that for 1 year and just incredibly unfulfilled there. And so if you guys will notice, I'm bouncing from like one thing to one thing to one thing. And it wasn't for the money. It wasn't for the fame. Like, sure, those were things that were like beneficial. But looking back on it now, retrospectively, I was just looking to be happy, bro. I was just looking for an identity that felt good for me. And I want to circle all of this back, Ryan, really quickly to the pro contract. And when we talk about deliverables. And so when things really changed for me is when I created a contract for myself. And I said, if I can wake up every single day and just be these three things, not do these three things, be these three things, I know at the end of the day when I'm brushing my teeth, I'm going to be proud of myself. And I feel like for men, that is the ultimate hardest thing for us to do in the galaxy of things that we do is to be proud of ourselves. And so I just created a game that I knew I could win because the game that I was playing, the hamster wheel that I was on was going to kill me, man. It was literally going to kill me because they were requiring more of an investment and I was getting less of a return. That is a recipe for killing yourself. So my point to this contract is I just wrote down on a piece of paper, I am a man of integrity, honor, and accountability. So if you guys can hear me, and whatever your contract is to you, and I challenge you guys to create a contract for yourself, not a contract that you can win, but something that is going to sharpen you, something that is going to build on you day after day after day. And integrity is not something that you can wake up and do. And so this is why it was important to me. And I want you guys to understand the difference between being able to do something and being able to be something. I lived my whole life trying to do things, and I understood where that put me. It gave me a lot of achievements, but it didn't do anything for me. And so I wanted to create a game that was about me, personally developing me, because I understand if I improve me, everywhere that I go is going to be affected by what I do in myself. And so if I can wake up every day and be integrity, if I can wake up every day and be accountable, if I can wake up every day and be honorable, I know that my podcast will be great. I know that my supplement company is going to grow. I know that the men that I coach are going to get the greatest version of me. And so I feel like we create like all of these different boxes that we need to check to be happy. But I feel like it's about simplifying it. And at the end of the day, if you can check those three boxes and you can be those three things, and I'm not sure what that is to the people out there listening, but figure out what those three things are that are going to sharpen you. And it says in scripture, iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another. And that's one of the reasons, man, I'm so honored to be on here with you, Ryan, because that's literally what you have dedicated your life to doing, is to sharpening other men and to getting in the space with them and forcing them into awkward conversations, into uncomfortable conversations. Because if you continue to do things the way that you've always done them, meaning speaking the same ways, doing the same ways, and being the same ways, you're going to get the same freaking results.
No doubt. Do you feel like through this process, and I know it isn't an overnight thing, but do you feel like the process you've taken that you no longer seek or require your dad's validation or his words of affirmation? Or do you still feel like that's part of what drives you and motivates you?
Yeah, I mean, he's my dad. You know what I mean? It's always going to be important to me. However, man, I played football in front of 120 million people, and their opinions were so important to me. I used to vomit before every single pro football game that I ever played in because I was scared to death. Yeah, I was scared to death that they were going to figure out I wasn't as good as what they thought I was. I was scared to death that my wife was going to figure out I'm not as good as what she thought I was, and the coaches and my teammates. And so as soon as the game would start, I would be fine. But it's just what your mind does to you before the moment of you actually practicing your skill and performing your skill. I'm brain farting. Where was I going with that?
I was talking about your dad and seeking his approval and validation.
Yeah. So right. So now the way that I've really kind of constructed my life is, man, I'm playing my life for an audience of one, because we get on social media, Ryan, and you and I have to do it. That's the way that we're able to communicate with other men. I freaking hate it, man. I love sharing my life, but I hate being reminded of everything that I'm not and everything I don't have. because that's what I feel like social media does. And here's the deal.
You mean through comparison or other people's comments, or what do you mean by that?
Just everybody's throwing their best stuff out there.
Yeah.
Everybody's putting their best stuff out. Even me and you, Ryan, like we won't put